What's up, you guys? This is Rob from A Gay Guy Plays, and today on The Snapshot, it's all about poking and prodding and spreading a little bit of that status when we take a look at the Endura. Let's keep it! So, you can pick up the Endura in the Tenno Lab of your clan dojo, but only once you've completed your research on the Nami Skyla. However, do be aware that it does take Mastery Rank 7 to craft. Now, if you are a bit eager for the promise of penetration and you don't really want to wait, you can always pick this up in the market pre-built along with the weapon slot and catalyst for 175 plat. There's also a bundle. There's a button, you just click on the bundle and it takes you to there, and you can get there as well for 310 plat. This is gonna be a shit show review. So the Endura is a puncture-based rapier with a 25% status chance. It's got about 20 more base damage than the Destreza, but it does have a slower attack speed, which you'll definitely be able to feel, and only a 5% critical chance. Now, while the stat spread does sound like a bit of a bummer, I do have to admit the Endura works extremely well with condition overload. Vulpine Mask, the only rapier stance currently available, guarantees slash procs. Its primary IPS being puncture gives it a good chance of proccing a weaken, and of course any elements that you toss onto this just adds to the mix. This should guarantee at least a 120% boost to its base damage in your first few strikes. So while it may not seem like a powerhouse straight out of the gate, with the right mod combinations, this thing can absolutely wreck face. Alright, so when it comes to the build, it's all actually pretty basic, with the only real big standouts being condition overload and drifting contact. Everything else is kind of just like pumping up the status chance of the weapon. However, I do have to point out one thing that's just kind of like on there for fun. I leveled up Healing Return all the way, and it cost me a whole lot of endo, and usually Life Strike would be in that spot, and that's probably what should be in that spot, but I just figured, I have the mod, might as well just slip it in there, right? I mean, it's not doing anything else, so let's give it a shot. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how this performs. Now we've pulled out our level 145 Bombard friend per usual. And I can tell you right now that if you can see, oh, well, there's the finisher right there. Even without the finisher though, this thing actually performs really surprisingly well. And one of the big things that I always kind of like have to point out, and I feel like it's a little bit necessary, is that especially with corrosive, with weapons that proc a lot of corrosive, kind of like this one does, what ends up kind of happening with those is basically, it feels like you're not doing anything until you hit about the halfway point, and then all of a sudden you smack them really, really hard and then they're dead. And that's what I've just kind of noticed in general when it comes to corrosive weapons, is like you feel like when you're first starting out, you're like, oh my god, I'm never gonna eat through this armor. Then once you get to like the halfway point, all of a sudden, like in a blink of an eye, they die. And that's just kind of like how it always seems to work. And there's the finisher move that pretty much kills them instantaneously. So as you can see, it performs in a couple different ways, but I still actually am really surprised about how well it does its job for something that looks kind of inconspicuously good. It just shows that like the right mod setup can really make or break a weapon. So all in all, I do have to admit that the Endura definitely surprised me. Just looking at its stats, I was kind of like, this is gonna be okay. Maybe just a little bit better than Mastery Fodder, but I do have to admit that after tossing on Condition Overload, the other status mods that are available to melee weapons, and specifically Vulpine Stance, which provides that slash proc that isn't kind of like merging with its primary base weapon damage, which is puncture, it kind of almost guarantees that 120% base damage from Condition Overload, not to mention all of the other statuses that you can apply on top of that. So that's really where the power of this weapon comes from, and they were right. They said something about its like delicate form concealing its true ferocity, or some weird bullshit like that. Regardless, it is a good weapon, at least to me. Let me know what you guys think. But that's about it for the facts and figures. If you guys want to stay tuned for like fun stuff when it comes to like its visuals and just kind of discussing rapiers and kind of cool weapons like that in general, stay tuned for the gameplay. Alright, so straight out of the gate, I know that y'all are gonna ask me about the new armor set, and I have to be honest with you. I kind of want to hold my opinions on that until number one, it's not bugged, because at the moment it is not taking your energy colors, as you can see. And I also want to try it on a couple of different, characters before I go ahead and really kind of make my final judgment on it. As it stands right now though, it's I don't hate it. The Sayandana I am less than fond of because of some of the color arrangements on it. It's like the metallics are on a weird panel and it's like linked to another weird panel. I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. But at least the armor set itself, I'm giving you a resounding, it's aight for now. Now, speaking of the one things, though, that I'm not super aight with visually, is I'm not necessarily the fondest in the world of certain parts of this model. And the thing that makes me really, really angry is because I like the model, except for these weird dangly bits right here. I do not like that. It's like weird because I almost feel like it's kind of slightly infested. Oh, and by the way, I did swap my elemental combos. Just so that you guys know, so that we can get some gas and some electricity on, a little bit of a PG&E build. That way we can kind of spread the proc love to multiple enemies and hopefully get more use out of condition overload. That's what I'm trying to work with here. To be honest with you, is this going and I'm the only one defending it? Okay. interesting. But yeah, no. So my whole stance on this is like I love the like metallic bits that they have. Like I love the fact that like it's a double prong. It's got little tips on it to really kind of like force the puncture and whatnot. Wow, these guys are not doing any kind of damage to this whatsoever, though, even though we're just kind of slacking on it and they're all piling on it. I really like the model, except for that weird dangly bit. It almost kind of has, I don't know if many of you guys still use it or took a good look at it lately, but it's almost got that Paris Prime feel where it's got like half of it covered up like that. You know, it's got a little bit of that. I really like the swirl. There's a lot of things to like about it, but for me, that dangly bit thing really just irritates me. I'm like, DE. Like, and I don't know, maybe it's meant to, like, I'm assuming it's meant to resemble leaves, but it's textured like weird rubber. So part of me is just kind of like not feeling the look of it whatsoever. Now, performance-wise, actually, I will be honest with you, I'm very fond of it. I'm kind of really digging at how well it performs. I like the fact that it's got a little bit more customization than Crit, that you can really kind of like tailor it to some of the weirder builds that you want to do. You know, like you could run the stealth gas one, which is kind of an interesting thing to try out. But legitimately, I feel like, at least when I saw it perform, it feels very similar to the Distreza. And the thing about weapons like these, it's definitely measured in like the time to kill or how many strikes it's going to take to kill an enemy. So I'm very curious, and I'm actually thinking that after I'm done like editing and taking a look at all of the footage, I'm actually tempted to kind of like measure its strikes to kill an enemy. But then again, when it comes down to that, I'm like there's different melee multipliers that it all boils down to. Yeah, I'll play the Distreza a little bit after this, and I'll take a look, and I'll give you guys a linked comment, or what is it called? A pinned comment in the, oh, you jerkbag. A pinned comment in the comment section, because that's where pinned comments go, and I'll let you know if I feel like they perform very similarly, because it basically what it boils down to is they're kind of like twins, you know what I mean? Like one's the crit twin, one is the status twin. And statistically, I almost feel like, because it's weird like the way that you want to measure it, because of the fact that crit can do so much damage, but really you focus on status's time to kill. That's how you measure how well status is performing, is how fast it kills something, because you can't measure it on the amount of damage you're doing, because it has all of these extra like supplemental effects that go along with it, and that's the kind of harshness that you have to do, because usually when you compare crit weapons, it's easy, because you could just, you know, do the math, you can pen and paper it, but with status it's a little bit different, especially because status is a little bit RNG too, because if you're running you know, if you're running like corrosive, say you're not getting the procs that you need just by sheer chance, you know, maybe you get 3 fire procs in a row instead of like 3 corrosive procs, and it just, you know, you just get kind of blown out a little bit because of the fact that you're unable to kind of tie your enemies down and like kind of shred them of their armor and kind of whittle away at them, you know. It's kind of like one of those things where I'm like, all right, well, sometimes you get an unlucky roll on those, and I think that maybe that's one of the things that it kind of sucks about status, but then again, that's the same thing for crit. It all comes down to RNG at the end of the day, which I'm sure hurts a lot of people's souls. Oh, are we getting another ambulance? We're getting another ambulance. But yeah, So I think that pretty much covers kind of like its look, its performance. We'll do a little bit of comparison ourselves. And at the end of the day, one of the other things that I was kind of like considering trying out and seeing if I could do a little bit of research on and seeing exactly how well it functions is converting, not necessarily converting, but turning melee weapons that don't necessarily have crit into viable crit weapons. You know, because we do have like Naramon, which adds the base critical chance. Not base critical chance, it adds the additive critical chance. So regardless of what your weapon is, it's always going to add, I believe it's 30% crit. I think it's 30% crit chance. So it gives you that bonus in that way, and then of course you can also run the Adarza kitty, which will give you fairly consistent, I believe it's a 60% additive. So I mean, just with that, if you've got both going at the same time, whenever the Adarza is doing its job, whenever the Adarza is, oh, that's not an enemy, whenever the Adarza is doing its job, technically you've got a 90% chance to crit. So as we know, like the best weapons out there really are the weapons that combine both crit and status, because there's a lot that you can do with both crit and status weapons when you have them combined, because with melee weapons specifically, because you have the damage multipliers, oh, it can ramp up real quick and get really powerful. So I don't know, maybe that's something that I should try to explore in the future with some different status melees, because it's really like, here's the thing. When you don't have armor, crit is gonna win. Crit is gonna be absolutely a powerhouse. When you don't have any defenses to really kind of like mitigate the insane amount of damage you can put out, especially on a melee weapon where you get the melee multipliers, right? So crit can do a whole lot of damage, but if it comes up against armor, it kind of goes to shit, and that's where status really comes into play. So a part of it is almost along the lines of, if you can get both on the same weapon, then you can be absolutely devastating. So I don't know, I'm thinking that maybe one of these days I'll kind of like experiment with that. What is that? Are you up there? Damn it. I wanted to see if I could switch teleport him, but it's not gonna work. Jerk. But yeah, so that about does it for this episode on the Endura. Let me know what you think about its model. Do you think it's a little too flippity-floppity? Like, look at that. It looks like, see, for me, it kind of almost ruins it. I almost wish that they were just, like, flat, that they weren't rubbery, you know what I mean? What do we want? Carrier Prime is getting vaulted, so, oh, Vectus Prime. I'm gonna do Vectus Prime. No, people want Carrier Prime more, so we're gonna do the Carrier Prime. We'll do that. But yeah, so that about does it for this episode. Let me know how you feel about the Endura's model. Do you like the little weird floppy bits? Do you wish they were like maybe flat and like had a design they just kind of like jangled like bangles? Let me know if you feel like it's an interesting twin of the Destrezza. Which one do you like visually more? Do you like the Endura more? Do you like the Destrezza more? Which one would you take with you? But let's not turn this into a mean, like, snarky, like, this versus that in the comment section. We got enough of that with the whole Oberon everything. Like, legitimately, why is Oberon so dramatic? Everybody always wants to fight about Oberon. Anyway, so that about does it for me. You guys have a great day, and as always, love somebody, hurt nobody, and touch your body. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye!